There are founders who have spent 10 years building incredible companies and almost nobody knows who they are. Then there are founders whose companies aren't necessarily better, but somehow people trust them before they've ever become customers. For a long time, I thought this was just good marketing, but now I think it's something much deeper. I think every founder starts two companies on the day they decide to build one. If we haven't met before, I'm Yuvaan, a video content strategist. I help experts turn their knowledge into authority through strategic video content systems. When we talk about entrepreneurship, we almost always talk about the visible things: the product, the website, the office, the funding, the employees, revenue, growth, market share. That's the picture we all have in our minds. Ask someone what a founder builds, and they'll describe a business. They're not wrong, but I think they're only describing half the job. Because something else begins the moment you decide to start a company. Not on the day you get your first customer, not when you launch your website, not after you become successful, right from the beginning. Another asset quietly starts taking shape. Most founders don't even notice they're building it. But every conversation, every presentation, every client meeting, every interview, every podcast, every LinkedIn post, every YouTube video, every opinion they publicly express is adding another brick to it. And over time, that asset becomes just as valuable as the company itself. Not because it generated revenue directly, because it generates trust. And trust changes everything. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine there are two consulting firms. Both have equally experienced teams. Both charge similar fees. Both consistently deliver excellent work. On paper, they're almost identical. Now imagine you're about to hire one of them. One firm's founder has spent the last 3 years sharing thoughtful ideas online. Not every day, not chasing trends, just consistently explaining how they think, why certain strategies fail, what they've learned from clients, what mistakes businesses keep repeating, how they approach difficult discussions. You have never met this person, but something interesting has happened. Now you feel like you already know them. Not personally, professionally. You understand how they think. You know what they believe. You know how they solve problems. Now compare that with the second founder. Equally competent, maybe even more experienced, but invisible. You have no idea how they think. No idea what principles guide them. No idea whether they are someone you'd actually enjoy working with. So, when it's time to choose who feels safer, that's an important word, safer. Because most buying decisions, especially the high value ones, aren't really about finding the absolute best option. They are about reducing uncertainty. People don't buy certainty, they buy confidence. And confidence often comes from familiarity. I've spoken about this before. Not because familiarity guarantees quality, but because familiarity lowers perceived risk. That's why people say, I've been following your content for a while. It's not small talk, it's a signal. They're telling you, I already trust the way you think. And that's incredibly difficult for competitors to overcome. Not because your product is dramatically different, but because your relationship with the market started long before the sales conversations happened. This is where I think we have misunderstood personal branding. We have reduced it to content creation, posting consistently, building followers, growing on LinkedIn, getting more views. I don't think that's what personal branding actually is. Those are just activities. The real outcome is much bigger. You're building familiarity at a scale. You're allowing thousands of people to experience your thinking without even sitting across the table from you. And that's something businesses couldn't do 20 years ago. Years ago, if someone wanted to trust you, they usually had to meet you or know someone who knew you. Trust traveled through referrals. But today, trust often travels through content. People watch 10 of your videos, read 20 of your posts, listen to your podcast while driving to work. By the time they finally book a call, the introduction has already happened. That's a fundamental shift. And I don't think enough of founders appreciate how significant it is. And the strange part is, we have adapted almost every part of business to this new world: sales, marketing, hiring, customer support, technology. Everything has evolved, except the way many founders think about themselves. They still believe, my company needs a brand. I agree. But I also think the founder does. Not because every founder needs to become famous, not because everyone should become an influencer, because today's market increasingly wants to understand the person behind the business, how they think, what they value, why they make certain decisions, whether their expertise is genuine, and that's difficult to communicate through a logo. It's incredibly easy to communicate through a human being. And that's where I think most of the founders are missing something. They're spending years building one company, while another one is quietly waiting to be built. I don't think founders build one company. I think they build two. The first company is obvious. It's the one everyone can see. It has products, it has customers, it has employees, it has revenue, it has operations, everything we traditionally associate with a business. But alongside it, another company is quietly taking shape. It doesn't have an office, it doesn't have employees, it doesn't appear on your balance sheet, but it's growing every single day. It's building in the mind of people. Every interaction they have with you, every interaction they have with your ideas adds another brick to it. Every video, every podcast, every keynote, every article, every interview, every conversation someone has about you when you're not in the room, it's all contributing to this invisible company. And I call it the second company. The second company doesn't sell products, it sells confidence. Think about the last time you hired someone for an important project. Maybe it was a consultant, a lawyer, an architect, a financial advisor. Were you only evaluating their service? Probably not. You were evaluating the person behind it, how they think, whether they sound credible, whether they seem experienced, whether you believe they'll make good decisions when things become uncertain. That's what the second company influences. Not because it replaces expertise, because it helps people see the expertise. And those are two very different things. I've said this before and I genuinely believe it. Expertise don't automatically create authority. Authority begins when expertise becomes visible. The second company is what makes that visibility possible. Which brings me to a thought that's been sitting in my head for a while. I think we have defined the role of a founder too narrowly. We say, this person founded a company. I don't think that's the complete story. Because the moment you decide to build a business, you're also making another commitment, whether you realize it or not. A founder isn't only the founder of their company, they're also the founder of their personal brand. Not in the social media sense, in the strategic sense. That's why Strategy to Screen exists. Because I've met too many founders with extraordinary businesses that almost nobody knows about. Not because they lacked expertise, but because the market never had the opportunity to experience that expertise. Their first company was growing and it was growing very well. Their second company wasn't. You're responsible for shaping how the market understands you, how it remembers you, how it talks about you when you are not in the room. How much confidence people have in your thinking before they ever become your customer. Nobody else can build that for you. A marketing team can amplify it. A content agency can package it. A videographer can film it. An editor can polish it. But only the founder can create it. Because your personal brand isn't made of content. It's made of convictions. Content simply makes those convictions visible. And here's something I find fascinating. The first company compounds financially. The second company compounds psychologically. Every time someone discovers your work, they don't just consume a piece of content. They become slightly more familiar with you. Then they watch another video. They hear you on a podcast. They see your name in someone's LinkedIn post. Maybe they attend a webinar. None of these moments feel significant on its own, but together they can create something incredibly powerful. Recognition becomes familiarity. Familiarity becomes trust. Trust becomes preference. And preference becomes opportunity. That's why the founders who consistently share their thinking often seem to attract opportunities that others don't. Speaking invitations, podcast appearances, partnerships, media interviews, better hires, warmer leads. It's easy to assume those opportunities came because they became visible. I think it's the other way around. Those opportunities came because they became trusted. Visibility was simply the vehicle. Now imagine two founders again. Same experience, same quality of work, same expertise. Fast forward 5 years. The first founder spent those years only building their business. The second founder built the business and the second company. Now ask yourself, which founder receives inbound inquiries from people who already know their philosophy? Which founder spends less time proving credibility? Which founder gets invited to conversations before competitors even know the opportunity exists? The products may still be equal, but the perception isn't. And the perception changes the behavior. That's why the second company eventually starts feeding the first. Trust lowers resistance. Recognition shortens sales cycles. Authority creates opportunities that marketing alone struggles to produce. So maybe it's time we redefine what it actually means to be a founder. A founder's responsibility isn't finished once they've built a great company. The responsibility also includes building the reputation that company will stand on. Because in today's world, people rarely trust companies first. They trust people. The company simply becomes the place where that trust is exchanged. That's why I believe every founder is building two companies. One generates revenue, the other generates reputation. One creates customers, the other creates confidence. Ignore either one, and you are choosing to grow with only half of your potential. Because the companies that endure aren't only remembered for what they built, they're remembered for who built them. So here's a question I'd leave you with. If someone discovered your company today, would they also discover the founder behind it? And more importantly, would they understand how that founder thinks? Because I don't think that's optional anymore. I think it's part of the job. If you are a founder, you're building two companies, whether you realize it or not. The question is, are you intentionally building the second one? If you're interested in more strategic thinking around authority, positioning, and video content, consider subscribing. Every week, I share ideas to help experts transform their knowledge into authority because expertise deserves to be seen.